I think we're ready. Or
I think so.
are you ready to get into it? As you know, today we will be talking about leash pulling and the hidden roadblocks to loose leash walking and how we can overcome them. So, hello, my name is Eva. If any of you don't know yet, um, I work at Chasing the Tail. I'm the owner of Chasing the Tail alongside Anya and Nika and Monica. I own two border collies and have been in dog training for just about 15 years now.
Hello, I'm Anya. I also work at Chasing the Tail. And I also own two border collies. One's 14 years old and the other one's 6. And right now, my main goal is sheep herding with my younger one. And obviously, working at Chasing the Tail and sharing the best possible knowledge to everybody that wants to have a um, harmony in their life with their dogs.
And just so we don't only talk about ourselves, we'd like to get to know all of you as well. So please feel free to comment down below where you're watching us from right now. We've already had a couple of people in our emails asking us about the time zones. So we know there are all of you from all over the world. So it's always really exciting to see. And besides that, also we'd be really interested to know about your dogs. And specifically, Anya, do you want to let them know?
Yeah, I specifically would love to hear what your current goals are with your dogs. If you have anything specifically that you're currently working towards, we'd love to know about it. Right.
Right. Let's get into the outline. Well, first and foremost, what's in this life for you? Many of you probably joined for a couple of different reasons, but to put it to sum it up for you, what you can expect within the next hour and 15 minutes is to find out what the bigger picture is. The bigger picture regarding pulling on leash and teaching loose leash walking. Oftentimes, we, as owners and trainers, to like to focus on just the symptom, which is the actual pulling itself, which is where we feel that the entire process of teaching loose leash walking gets stuck. So we're here to show you that in fact the pulling on leash is just a symptom. It's the tip of the iceberg, and what lies underneath is the real rich stuff, which if you can recognize within your own dog, you are bound for a success and a much smoother loose leash training journey. So, Anya, would you like to take us through what will be in our presentation and the kind of chapters that we will touch on within the next hour or so?
Of course. First of all, we will try to be short, but usually that's not our best trait. But you can expect it to be about 1 hour to 1 hour 15 minutes long. This whole presentation. So first, we will start with discussing where the problem lies. So the problem obviously is the tip of the iceberg, but first to start working on your loose leash walking, it's important to recognize the cause for your dog's leash pulling. So first we will discuss a couple of different causes, obviously not all of them, but the most important or obvious or common ones. And after it, we will give you some examples, some case studies of dogs we have met throughout the making of our loose leashed course, and their drivers for pulling and our solutions for those problems. And in the end, we will also have a Q&A. So if you have a question, if there is a question that pops up in your mind when you're listening to these presentations, just write it down in comments so you don't forget about it, and we will read them out in the end and answer as many as possible. Okay.
So, if you're here to know what the solution is to your leash pulling dog, we're gonna give it to you within the next hour, but it's not so simple. um, the gist of it is that you have to look at the bigger picture, understand why your dog does the things that they do, and, of course, work for it, put in the effort. Unfortunately, we don't have a magical pill per se for you and your dog that will solve your leash pulling struggles within the next week. But we can, and we are here to give you a bigger understanding and to help you work with your dog against the problem and not against your dog and the problem. So, to step on the same page and attack this together. All right? So, um, let's approach the first question that we have, which is why do dogs pull and what makes leash walking one of the most difficult behaviors to teach and maintain? And the reason why this is because leash pulling is not just a random behavior that happens because dogs love it. But it's like I've just touched upon in the previous slide, it's the tip of the iceberg. The reason why leash pulling happens is because of everything that lies underneath. And I think this is why it's one of the most difficult behaviors to teach, is because there's a giant pool of things that we don't see that lie beneath the problem that's causing the problem for us and for our dog. Um, and I think this is where most owners get stuck, is because we don't see what lies under the surface. And it's a lot to work through, which is why I believe that loose leash walking is one of the most difficult behaviors to teach. And then in the long term, also to maintain and to work through. Because of this giant abyss of things that lies underneath it. So yeah, what we often hear when we're talking about leash pulling is that, oh yeah, but my dog just loves to pull. And I think unfortunately it's not always that simple. Anya, would you like to touch a little bit on that and how we came into contact with that during the past 3 years while we were focusing on the loose leash walking course?
Yeah, for sure. Yeah, I think it's funny to think that dogs would enjoy pulling. It's not like it's enjoyable or comfortable for that matter, unless of course we are talking about canicross or bike where your dog is wearing a comfortable harness made for that, and it's they enjoy it in the concept of the whole game. It's not that they just like to pull, that it feels good or anything like this. And yeah, when we were meeting dogs and really working on our course, we found that even the dogs who really loved to pull, their owners would claim so, they all stopped pulling when they were in a better state of mind, so a calm state of mind, where there was nothing for them to pull towards to, when they were not excited or anxious, or there was nothing on their agenda. This is the moment where they all stopped to pull. So that left us with the answer that dogs don't just love to pull, but that there's always reasons why they do it. It's not that they love it. um
Yeah,
so
I think a good, if I can just jump in,
yeah.
I think a good example of this is if you were, I know that oftentimes it might seem like your dog really, really loves to drag you behind them, but if you were to ask yourself, if I let my dog go, do you think they would come back with the leash and wait for you to hold it so that they could pull you, or would they just simply go either towards something that excites them or away from something that stresses them out? And I think this herein lies the answer. In absolutely most cases, no dog would come back and be like, "Please, I want to drag you behind me," but they would simply, you know, go towards what they like or don't. Um, one of the first things that I learned as a dog owner and trainer is that dogs don't scheme for things. They don't do things on purpose. They're simply acting out based on their emotions and things, things that they feel inside or things that they see in the environment. So they never do something for the sake of, you know, wanting to piss you off. Yeah,
Yeah,
and I think
that's
this is a
that's a good point.
this is a good a common misconception that we come across when talking about leash walking. Um, just to let you know that there's always a reason behind why they do the things that they do, not just because it's fun. We love it, you know? All right, next. So now let's get into the reasons behind why dogs pull, which is not that they love it. We're gonna delve into a couple of different ones before we get into the actual case studies themselves. So the first one is naturally different pace and different priorities. If you ever look at the way we humans walk, it's actually quite quite weird because we like
Quite
to walk.
boring.
Yeah, quite boring also because we really like to walk from destination A to destination B, normally in a very straight line. We always have places to be and places to go. Well, you know, I'm exaggerating, but humans really do like to walk in a straight line down a path or down a sidewalk, which is not very common for, in fact, most other species on this planet. If you think about how your dog walks when they're off leash, it normally looks like zigzagging. They go to explore, they go into the woods, they pee on a bush. In fact, sometimes they even turn around and walk in the complete other direction because they smell something nice. Um, they don't so much have an agenda like we do. You know, sometimes I go on a walk and in my head I have, right, I've got this circle route in my mind and I'm gonna walk down this route. Not my dog though. He goes out and he goes to explore, right?
Yeah,
Anya?
I think for dogs it's very unnatural to walk the way we walk. And like you said, if you let them off leash, they would not be just walking straight. And especially I feel like when you take your dog out for a walk and you kind of expect them to follow you just walking straight ahead, I think that's quite boring for your dog. Obviously, for a short period of time to get somewhere or something, that's completely fine. There are walks where it's just basically from A to B, like you said. But when you take your dog out, you kind of this is the time for them, and it's the time you want to kind of adapt to their needs as well. And if those needs are not met, then and if it's just a straight line, that's quite boring for them as well.
And
Which
that's
doesn't
not to
mean,
say
yeah, that doesn't mean you should not be doing it, but it's the reason why your dog might be just, yeah, not enjoying your straight A to B walk.
yeah. And
Um,
that's also not to say that there aren't dogs who do in fact enjoy just walking in a straight line. I know there are some, but the vast majority they tend to go around and explore and zigzag and
yeah.
walk randomly.
Yeah. My old one, for example, she likes to stop and take time. And then she crosses the path and then she stops and takes time as well. So if I were, yeah, if she's really just um walking in like she has very different needs. My young one as well, she's just all over the place, but they obviously have their very different needs and their purpose of a walk is very different to ours a lot of times. So then we just sometimes we don't agree on the style of the walk, and that's what causes some dogs to pull as well, because they just want to go fast and they just want to do their own thing. But luckily, I think this is, if that's the reason for your dog to pull, because they just want to be everywhere at once and just want to have a different pace and explore and stuff like that, I think that's not one of the hard leash pullings to fix. In fact, probably one of the simpler ones to fix.
Yeah. I
Um,
would say if this is the sole reason your dog pulls, you're in luck. And with that, we can move on to the next reason why some dogs pull, and that is pulling gets them where they want to go. It sounds simple, but what this often means is that dogs have a reinforced or a learned behavior that has become their go to, which we always like to say teaching a new behavior is much, much easier than changing an old one that has a history of reinforcement and that dogs know works or that they enjoy or that they find relief in. Which can be a little bit more difficult to train because you gotta show them train a new behavior that is better for you and show them that in fact it's likely better for them as well. yeah, so you got to change that kind of history of reinforcement, and think about it like, if your dog has 5 years of reinforcement for one behavior, you will likely have to invest and reward the behavior that you like so much more. um
Yeah, and
yeah,
and
so
I feel like, sorry to jump in.
go ahead.
And I feel like a lot of times how this looks like is your dog smells something in the bush and they pull you towards it. So you basically just, you're surprised and you follow with your movement and they get where they want it to be anyway. So they learn that if they pull strong enough that you're, and surprise you sometimes, even some dogs really know that if they pull really strong, really fast, you will move because you don't really have a choice. And this is how they kind of learn that if they really want to go somewhere, they will get to that place. And it builds a reinforcement history that's really hard to break. And it's oftentimes dogs that do it tend to be bigger and stronger. And if you aren't really prepared to stand still and really hold your leash strong, they learn quite quickly that they can in fact move you and drag you behind. Um, I know that, for example, I have experience with some male dogs where they decide they want to pee on that bush. That's when they will kind of yank you behind them. And to break that behavior, you really have to be one step in front of your dog and really expect when your dog might decide that this is where they want to go, and stay really still and really hold them back so they don't self reward every time they kind of pull you behind.
Yeah, that's the unfortunate thing, isn't it? That normally it's big dogs who tend to do this because they've learned that they can. If they
Yeah,
just pull hard enough and if they surprise you, you'll likely go flying behind them and they'll get to where they want to be.
yeah. But again, luckily, not one of the hardest things to retrain as well.
Yeah.
Um,
I think for this one, you just got to be one step ahead of your dog.
and really expect, yes,
Yeah.
and prevent them from being rewarded for the yanking and pulling
Yeah.
you in direction, as well
One
as
step one step ahead of your dog metaphorically, not in a physical sense. So you got to think ahead of your dog.
right, right. Okay.
And now the final factor that leads to leash pulling, and the biggest one, is emotional factors. So this is one of, I would say, the most common reasons why dogs pull, is because they're feeling some kind of emotion. I think I touched on this at the beginning of this live. No dog does anything just for the sake of doing it. Mm, but they do it because they feel something. And so that's why I also say that this is one of the most common reasons why we find that dogs pull. And unfortunately for us, it's also one of the most difficult ones to work through, because you can't just train different emotions. You can't just tell your dog, you know what, feel happy, feel calm, it's not stressful, it's all peace and love. Don't worry about the cat that's running across the street. Don't worry about it. It's not so exciting. Um, which is why the emotional factors tend to be the most difficult ones to work with, because we're not so much training a different behavior, but we are conditioning different emotions, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
um you want to touch up on some of the emotions that lead to pulling and
Yeah.
kind of,
Sure.
yeah.
Yeah, first I'd like to also say that when you are outside and when you, for example, you want to work on your loose leash walking, um, you are always competing with the environment. So even if your behavior that you've taught your dog, so they have the skills, they know how to loose leash indoors or in your garden, and then you take them outside, and they feel overwhelmed or really excited, um, the behavior is probably going to fall apart unless you have really, really, really strong foundations of the behavior. And this is why strong foundations are actually so important, because it's really sometimes hard to win over the environment. But also, if your dog is incredibly anxious or overwhelmed by the environment, or just super excited to be out and about, that's what's going to cause the pulling. And sometimes asking them to do behaviors, even if they know them, would be even more frustrating for them at that point, where they're already over the threshold and so excited or so overwhelmed. Um, we have two examples here that we're just going to quickly go through, because there's a lot more case studies in the next slides. But just to compare, it's exactly the same behavior. The dog is pulling on a leash. The first one's Brownie. She's in this video, she's really overwhelmed by the environment she's in, and she's just trying to get out of this situation. So her reason for pulling is just overwhelmed and anxiety and stress. She doesn't want to be there, and she wants to go home, and this is why she pulls on the leash. Perhaps not to get away from something, or something that's bothering her in the environment, but just to kind of let out this anxiety as well, just to put it somewhere. The moment you see me stop on the leash, is where you can see her legs also shaking, because she's just having this anxiety and she just wants to get out of that situation. And then on the second video, you can see Zoomies, also a border collie. He's also pulling on a leash really strong, and he knows that there are sheep out in the fields that he's gonna go work. And he's so excited. He just wants to be there as fast as possible to begin to work. And this is why he's dragging me behind. So just to kind of see completely the same behavior as the tip of the iceberg, with two different emotional factors that lie below the surface. So this is why it's so important to know what causes your dog to pull, to kind of know what to address to resolve the end result at the end, or the end of behavior at the end. Right. I think we can continue. And this would be a place. Now you've heard a couple of examples, a couple of different causes why your dog might be pulling on the leash. There's still a lot more to come, but it's just the time for you to comment if you have seen your dog in those kind of situations, or if you could already find a reason why your dog might be pulling on the leash. You can write your thoughts down below. You can comment if there has been a situation that you feel like caused your dog to pull. You're welcome to write it down.
Yeah, we'll definitely be reading through them, but hopefully just the discussion that we've been having so far has sparked a couple of ideas inside your mind as well. And you've been able to kind of look at the theory we've just given you and compare a little bit what your dog might be going through as well. So, as we've been talking about throughout this live, the first and most important solution is to identify what drives your dog. With that, we'll be going on to a couple of case studies that we've prepared for you. The first one being environmental excitement. But to that point, go back a slide. Yeah, we wanted to just give you a little reminder not to fall for the trap. Don't focus too hard on solving the problem of loose leash walking itself, but before you ask yourself what causes it. Like we said, the very first solution is to identify what causes your dog to do the behavior that they do, because that's where the solution to your problem will come from. So don't go to the end, don't go to the tip of the iceberg to start with. Go to what lies beneath the surface. Yeah, because that will help you work with your dog and not against them. And now, the first case study, environmental excitement. Here we've got two puppies, my puppy Ponyo and his sibling Naru. Anya, would you like to describe the situation and what's happening here and the reason behind why the two puppies are pulling on leash?
Yeah. So here, Ponyo and Naru are about 3 months old, maximum. They're together on a walk. That already is exciting, quite exciting for the sibling puppies. Besides that, there's, I think, two or three more dogs walking somewhere also around. So that's quite exciting. The two puppies, they know that when they meet each other, they get to play, they get to run around. But even just the playing, meeting, and seeing each other, it's exciting enough. And it's so exciting that when they're on a leash, they will definitely pull. If they're not on a leash, they will probably run around, play, chase each other, and stuff like that. So the cause for those two puppies to pull is excitement. Obviously, they don't have the skills, they don't have the loose leash walking skills yet. But the cause for their pulling here is plain excitement to be together on a walk. Um, yeah. Eva, anything to add?
So we've got the video ready for you. Anya will just pull it up and you'll get to watch it first, and then I'll explain a little bit what's happening and the reason why it happens. So actually, I can talk you through it. You can see both of them are right at the end of their leash. They're pulling on their harness and they're super excited to be here. Like Anya touched upon earlier, the reason why this happens is, like, imagine it like a play date. The two puppies are young, they're siblings, and every single time we would meet together, it would be a fun time to play, it would be a fun time to explore, and mainly to run around. They're, as many of you will know, they're both border collies, and both of them found it very valuable to run around and chase each other, which is what caused their excitement. Normally, if I was to walk with my puppy alone, he'd be following me. He would, on leash or not, he'd be somewhere around me exploring. But when it was time for us to go on our walk together, it would be excitement through the roof. Couldn't wait to go and run, couldn't wait to go explore. And this was what lied beneath the surface of the pulling. In this kind of situation, if I wanted to work on the criteria that I had for my loose leash walking, it wouldn't be effective because he was just so excited and happy to be here that he had absolutely no interest in my criteria or what I wanted to teach him. This was not the time to work on it. This was his time to party. So you'll in the next couple of examples, you'll also see how this developed, and I'll talk you through it. But to give you the solution to this specific case that you see in front of you, what I would work on is I would do I would teach my puppy, especially if it's as young as 3 months, I would teach them the loose leash walking skills in the comfort of my own home, where nothing exciting is happening. Obviously, puppies like to see the world. They don't know the world. It's their first time experiencing everything around them. So it can be really difficult for most puppies to focus on what you're trying to tell them when they have the giant world ahead of them to meet and to see and to get to know. So where I would start teaching my puppy loose leash walking skills is inside, in a room that's quiet, where there are not many distractions, and where the process of learning a new skill alongside me can be the most valuable thing that's happening. Again, we talked about this before a little bit, but as soon as you're competing with the environment, it can cause difficulties because you have to fight against something that's happening around them, especially if that's a 3-month-old puppy. And in some dogs, the more you kind of try to distract them, the more frustration that can also cause. Yeah. So that would be my solution if someone with a 3-month-old puppy would come to me and say, "Oh, I'm really struggling." I would say, "All right, that's great. Build a value for teamwork, first of all. And the easiest place to build that is in the comfort of your own home, when at first you're not competing with anything. And have things of value to your puppy with you." Yeah. Right, Anya?
Yeah, I fully agree. Because oftentimes, if you were to ask them, each of them, either of them, to do anything in this situation, would probably just bring so much frustration into also your relationship and your teamwork, because they're just unable to do whatever you're asking, and it's not reasonable at that point. So I think one of the ways to set them up for success is really to to know what you're asking of them in a very specific situation. So, and this was not one of the situations where you would be successful asking anything of them with the skills they've had as well.
Yeah.
Because
Well, what we did do is twice a week we would then meet up for puppy school, where it was a controlled environment. We were in one space that then, in a while, they got to know, where everyone was working with their own dogs. So the puppies wouldn't have any interactions with each other. They would be a fair distance apart, and where everyone would be working with their own dogs. And that's where, in such an environment, it was much easier for the both of them to cooperate and to work with their owner. And we, of course, because and they're puppies who enjoyed playing with different toys, we incorporated a lot of play, and with that, we found great success in the teamwork that we had during those classes.
Okay.
So, moving on to case study number 2. Again, you see my dog Ponyo. Right, Anya, would you like to pull up the video?
Yeah.
All right, so here's Ponyo at the age of about 5 or 6 months. And again, this is a similar sort of situation. Oh, just watch the video. You can see him very excited at the end of his leash. Right. So at the end of that video, you also saw him huff and puff at something that he saw in the distance. And I think this is a great example of a dog who has a conditioned emotion within a certain situation. So what happened in the past 3 months from the previous video to what you're seeing here is that I didn't quite recognize how excited the walks with friends made him, and how that really became his conditioned emotion, this overwhelming excitement. So what would happen is whenever we were walking alone, he would walk perfectly fine, and if I was to go on a walk with friends, he'd be so through the roof excited that he would be pulling me, and to the point where he would actually also not be able to process all the different information that's happening around him. So, for example, if he saw something weird, like, I don't know, a trash can in the middle of a field, or a rock that was randomly positioned somewhere, he would huff and puff like you saw at the end of that video. And that's when I realized that I have a bit of a problem on my hands, and that I should change the emotions. Well, sorry, not change the emotions, but condition a more calm state of mind when going out and when going on adventures and walking. Because what would happen is we would drive somewhere with the car, and he'd be so excited in the car already that there was absolutely no way that I was able to ask him to walk next to me on a loose leash when his excitement was that high. So not only did these emotions cause pulling, so the tip of the iceberg, that's pulling, but also some other behaviors that came alongside it, like barking at stuff in the distance, and so on and so on. So again, what my solution was for this type of leash, pulling on leash, was in fact to work on the underlying emotion that he had, which was excitement. And I did that by, first of all, starting to take more time just with him and go on more walks alone, just me and him, so no friends. No, mainly it was the dogs that were making him excited. And at some point also, if he was driving in Anya's car, or if he saw Anya's car approaching, it was like, all right, it's party time, which would send him through the roof. So I first of all worked on driving somewhere and then just spending time with him. So I was I drove somewhere and then I would play with him. So this kind of excitement was then excitement about me, about the fact that it was time for our teamwork, it was time for us to play, it was time for us to work together. And also what we started then doing is having just generally less running around crazily without rules. on our walks. So in this video, you can also see our friend Monica has her two dogs on leash, and also Tuvalu, I think, was on leash.
Yeah, on a
Um,
long leash.
a what?
On a long leash. All of
Yeah,
dogs were on a long leash, so we would help Ponyo be more calm. Because I think what I know that what lead to these big emotions from his side is also just expecting the crazy running, which border collies love to do, and they hold a lot. It holds a lot of value for them to just run and play and chase each other, which led up all the way to here, where you figured you have a problem.
yeah.
So
So it
adapt.
was this sort of sense of anticipation that, oh my God, we're gonna run. And also in this video, you saw either it was me or it was Anya who did like a kissing noise, and the most that he was able to do is offer a look and then went right back to pulling on leash again. So that's kind of another proof that, all right, he's not here. He's not capable of checking in with me for long enough to focus on my criteria of loose leash walking. So this was another kind of situation where I would not ask him to loose leash walk and to stick to the criteria, but would first of all work on achieving a calmer state of mind on our walks. So with time and practice and dedication, also another thing I would do is, if I didn't have the option to go for a walk alone, and if we were meeting up as to go for a walk together, and I wanted to go for that walk, and I knew Ponyo would enjoy it too, I would drive up to the area 10 minutes earlier, and I would stop on the path earlier and spend some time with him, get him to engage with me, so we would be having fun before the other dogs would arrive, because for him the hardest thing was also getting out of the car and sprinting right away. So then when people would come one after another, slowly behind us, like after us, then the task was much easier for him. Or I would in fact get out of the car first, have him on his harness, and walk 15-20 meters ahead, because then it wasn't this idea of, okay, I'm heading in that direction and that's where they're gonna let us loose, but all his friends were behind him. So it was calmer. He was sort of more waiting for everyone to arrive, rather than, yes, collectively we go and we pull excitedly towards the field or wherever an opening space was for them to be able to run. So yeah. And then the long line came super handy. We had our dogs on the long line, so we were preventing this crazy running for the better part of a year, or a year and a half at this point.
Yeah, I think you had to break the routine entirely. So in the
Yeah.
beginning for you, that meant no walks with friends, because he learned, he had quite a couple of learning opportunities for him to build up that anticipation that every time he sees his friends, it's gonna be party time.
Yeah.
So
Because
I think it was a big learning experience for all of us to
yeah,
really structure walks and ensure that, because the more dogs you have, obviously, if they run, you cannot really cannot really go in a lot of spaces, because it's not safe for you or for people, or for the dogs to just crazy run and play around. And I think this was a great learning opportunity for everybody to just have dogs in a better state of mind, and now they can be all together and they can have nice walks.
yeah.
So,
And for me, it's also much more valuable that my dog comes to me to check in on me and see, all right, give me directions. Are we going this way or are we going that way? Rather than just looking at the other dogs for to see if, okay, let's see which way we're gonna run. So I like this kind of sense. Look, man, we're here together, you and me. It's not you and the other dogs and you forget about me. Uh, I need you to come and check in on me. So if a car comes by, I can call you to me and tell you to lie down, so you don't get hit by a car, and you're aware and I'm on your radar, and so he hears me when I ask him to do something, and he's happy to come back. So
yeah, I think it's really not just about the loose leash walking. It's general good state of mind that he can actually listen in, because when he's so high, brain goes out of the window and you can forget about anything, not just the loose leash walking. So I think this is why it's so worth what you're now explaining, to change the routine in a way that nurtures the correct state of mind that you want your dog in as well. And I feel like they so quickly spiral into, or like just quickly learn that every time they're out, you're just absolutely through the roof excited. And then all your skills fall apart as well.
Mm.
So I think that's so valuable. And I think it's gonna, I think everybody, I can see my dog in this as well.
Yeah.
Um,
And I
right.
think in this kind of state of mind, it's not reasonable for you to ask them to,
Oh, yeah.
stick to your criteria, because you'll just get into more conflict.
Yeah.
Right. So
Well, yeah. I think you even were at, when you were trying to find a way to resolve this, I think you were at the point where you did ask him to stick to criteria. And for a moment, you created quite a lot of frustration in the queue itself, because you asked this of him in a situation where he wasn't capable of. Obviously, you resolved that as well, but I think it's just such a learning curve to know when you're asking what you're asking, and that it's reasonable, so your dog can learn in the optimal emotions as well. Right. Okay. So that was, let's take that as a before. So that was a year and a half ago. About the puppy videos are from about a year, 2 years and a half ago, 2 years ago, about. So
a year and a half, I would say.
yeah.
Yeah.
Right. So you can go on, and I will play the videos for you. The first one first. Okay.
So I just wanted to let it play through its sound, so you can see that I'm not arguing with him. He's sticking with me. He's happy to be there with me. And this is in an environment that has a lot more stimuli, that had, other dogs walking by, that had other people walking by, that had cars, traffic, smell, sight, sounds. This is the center of London, and this is how his leash walking is now. He's able to focus, and you can also see Anya's dogs there as well, which he was the most excited to see and to run around with on our walks previously. And here he is now, being able to, being not able to, but happy to work with me and cooperate and walk on a loose leash. Yeah. So yeah, it was definitely a bit of, it was a bit of trial and error. It was a learning curve to kind of find the solution itself. But this is a great example of how having the correct state of mind and approaching the problem at its roots can bring you to the solution. And we've got another video of him alongside not just Anya's dogs, but some of the dogs that you saw in the first video. As you can see, there are many of us. Ponyo's on the left there. Here he is on a flexi leash, but you can see he's walking with a calm state of mind. He's not pulling, he's not barking at anything, and he's just happy to be there, not overwhelmed, not anticipating anything. And we were by the water heading over to swim, which is the absolutely most exciting for him, because it was, by the seaside was where he first learned that, oh, I can run on the sandy beach and we can have a lot of fun. So this is where he's at now, and I'm super proud of how far we've come. Right.
Yeah, I think that was a big learning in the past 2 years, I think, for me as well. The last but not least case study on the environmental excitement.
I think it's common in the breed that we have, because all we've been talking for the past 3 case studies is just excitement.
I think it's common, period.
Yeah.
I feel like this is the reason behind a lot of dogs pulling on leash. My older one, she's very natural at understanding the leash pressure. When she pulls, it's when she's excited. Well, now she's 14, so she doesn't. But if she pulled ever, it was because she was excited. My young one also. So I believe that a lot of people watching this live will find their dogs in this. Um, so that's the last one of the emotional excitement. In this video, you can see Tatsu. He's a border collie. He's about 8 months old, and that was his first walk of the day. And you can see how excited he is about. That's the beginning of his walk. There's other dogs around, and he's just excited to be out there.
So we
Yeah.
weren't heading towards anything in particular, but I think for him it was just so exciting to be out and about that, he was having the time of his life and he just wanted to go fast.
Um, right.
So I think again, it's a similar situation to what we described before. How I would approach this is, in this state of excitement, I would not be asking him to walk on a loose leash, but I would work. In a state of mind that is more, uh, what's the right word? Not cohesive, conductive for learning. That helps him learn. And that would not be in this state of excitement, that's for sure. So probably, I would do it from, on the way back from the walk, and then slowly incorporate things like pre-macking, into, his daily routine.
Yeah.
So that's, offering a behavior before giving him something in return. So you sit before I let you off leash, or you lie down before I give you your food and stuff like that. So they learn that, okay, something's exciting is happening, but I'll get to do that exciting thing by doing what you ask of
Yeah.
me. Yeah.
I would probably also, because this is the situation where he walks out of the house and he's full on. So I would, for dogs like this, I would also establish a nice routine prior to going from the house. Like
Yeah.
when coming from the house, what happens when your dog sees a leash? What happens when your dog sees a collar? If they're already like over the roof excited just because they know that they're going for a walk, then I would start already there and try to do some pre-macking as well in the house already before going out.
Yeah.
Um,
And establish a routine that can help them leave the house in a calmer state of mind.
right. Yeah. Okay. Finally, moving on from the environmental excitement to not understanding the criteria. We have this lovely video of Loti here. She's Eva's neighbor's dog. I will play the video first. Hoppala.
As you can see, she's just happy to be out.
There's obviously also a little bit of excitement. I feel like excitement kind of leaks in everywhere, but mostly and mainly Eva's not asking her to do anything because she doesn't know the criteria of walking on a loose leash. So she just walks a bit of left, a bit of right, a bit zigzag, sniffs, greets me, is happy to see me, and then continues marching forward. So that's actually oopsie doopsie, can be the reason behind a lot of dogs loose leash pulling, that they just don't know what exactly to do on a leash. And for Loti, that's exactly the case. So
Yeah.
yeah. And,
Yeah.
and here I know that we also wanted to film something with Loti, and Eva offered her food that she took. So sorry about that. We had unexpected visitors. Right. So as I began to say before, we actually did film some stuff with Loti, and she did take food, and she was willing to learn. So she was in a good state of mind to be able to take in information. So the solution for her here would simply be to start working on the skills. She wasn't overwhelmed. She was not super too excited to be able to walk on a loose leash. So for her, it was just the lack of the skills that caused her to just kind of not walk on a loose leash.
To walk the way that she felt was most natural, which was ahead.
Okay. Case study number 5. That was a funny one. Eva, you can go ahead with it. I'll play the video.
Right. This was okay. Go ahead. This is a Cocker Spaniel of Anya's parents. Um, and you can see she found something very valuable to smell. So this was a case of remind me what we said on the slide.
Oh yeah, lack of reinforcement.
Yeah. So many dogs, when we take them outside, the cause for not wanting to walk on a loose leash is because they find other things that are much more exciting in the environment. So what we have to offer them or what we have on our hands just doesn't cut it, for the lack of a better term. So in this kind of situation, what I would suggest doing is bringing reinforcement that works for my dog. So either for some dogs this can be play, for some dogs this can be food of a higher value. I don't quite remember what Anya had in this case, but either take chicken or fish or something that your dog likes more. Every dog will like something more than something else. And with dogs that find the environment the most rewarding thing, I would think about also pre-macking. Pre-macking can help. That was the concept that we talked about earlier. That is, you give me something in return and I give you what you want. So that doesn't always necessarily have to be food. Sometimes, for example, with Ponyo, he likes to run. It can be I'll ask him to walk on a loose leash before I let him go. Or in this case with Lola specifically, it's that she wanted to smell something. She finds new smells exciting, especially in bushes. It was, after all, what Cocker Spaniels were bred to do, to chase the birds out of the bushes. So in this case, what would help her is to gain a bigger distance away from the bushes, or to have a history of pre-macking, so she would know, all right, I can actually get to the bushes if I do what Anya asks me to do. But for that, you obviously she would have to have a reinforcement of that before. So there are dogs who refuse to leash walk walk on a loose leash with you because there are simply more exciting things happening around. So for that, you have to think ahead of your dog, and work in an environment that helps them learn. So this could either be on a path that she knows well, so there are not new smells, or on a path where there aren't that many bushes to smell. I think this particular street also has quite a lot of cats and animals running around, which are very exciting for her. So either walking on a sidewalk where there aren't so many bushes, or walking on a street that she knows well, or even training, first of all, inside the comfort of your house. So this value for the behavior itself grows, first of all, there, before testing it under different distractions and smells and things that they find of value. Because like we said before, when you're outside, you're always competing with the environment. So if your dog doesn't find the process of working with you or whatever you have to offer them so reinforcing enough for loose leash walking to make sense for them, they're not going to do it. Yeah. Right. Is there anything else you'd like to add?
Yeah, no, you completely described it all. I think Lola, in this situation, if she had a higher value treat, specifically for her case, if she had a higher value treat, like a cooked chicken or something yummier than just, I think I work with just kibble it's usually enough for her. I could beat that distraction. I could be more important than the distraction in the bush, or simply for her by walking somewhere on the side where there's no bushes and grass, because that really pulls her in. That tends to distract her as well. So if I were to have a higher value treat, I would just switch it in this situation just to help her get over this bush as well. And I would obviously also work on a leash pressure cue, because she is the kind of dog that pulls against the pressure. So if she's at the end of the leash, she will not turn around, like turn back to me and release the pressure, she will pull against it as well. So I would work on that for her. Right. Case study number 6.
Another Cocker Spaniel.
This is really entertaining. This dog is entertaining. I will play the video and then we can go ahead. I think it started a bit late, but this is how it kind of starts as well. Right. This is Fingal, and he's a very fun dog. He does have the drive for food. He does love to work with you, but he has a lot of energy. And for him, obviously, the reason behind the pulling is also excitement to be out there, but he also has a big need for exercise. And for him to be able to work with him was to first burn off some of this energy that he has. So we would take him for a walk or a run or a swim, and after that, we would take him in an easier environment for him to be able to learn, which is not the fields and not the walking path as you could see. And we would work with him in the garden in the comfort of his kind of home. This is where, after the exercise with the treats, with the yummy treats, he was able to learn really, really well and also stick to the criteria.
Yeah, and I think in this kind of situation, again, it would be unreasonable to expect him to walk on a loose leash when the main need that he has is, I want to run. I want to be out there. I have this physical need to move my body, and it would be unreasonable to ask of him, now you gotta walk slow and you gotta walk next to me. Yeah.
He's really also interested in sniffing, like he kind of tracks the animals. Obviously, again, another Cocker Spaniel. So it's really hard to compete with that as well, especially in environment like in the video. If you let him off leash, he would be really far away in the distance. And if he found a scent, then he would probably follow it. So that's another. It's a hard competition to beat. So for us to kind of meet his needs of exercise and also play, because if you, for example, were to play with a ball or like do some dummy training, then he would be really set up for success, and he was able to learn really, really well. So this was our solution for him.
And yeah, we actually found that the more kind of the more we fulfilled his needs, the better he was also on leash. He would zigzag a lot less. It wouldn't just be constant sprinting, and circling around you, because he had a job that day. He was able to run around, and which meant he was much more set up for success to actually learn and work on loose leash walking. So I think when we're talking about all of these things that lie underneath the surface, these are the kind of causes that you have to meet, first of all, before you're able to, in order to be able to raise their value for the loose leash walking behavior itself. So it's not that then whenever you want your dog to loose leash walk, then they shouldn't be excited at all. No, it's
you
just
have to go for 1 hour run first before you can. It's not a long term. It's not gonna be forever.
Yeah, a long-term investment. It's just you have to make this investment first of all in order to be able to raise the value for the loose leash walking behavior itself.
Yeah, well said. Case study number 7, reinforced/learned behavior. We touched on this before when we were describing the motivators, kind of why dogs pull. This is gonna be the video of zoomies. I'll play it again. So you can see here that he wanted to go sniff that bush, and he dragged me all the way to the bush. So again, that is for him a learned behavior. He knows that if he wants to go somewhere, he can do that by really pulling strong. And again, the problem with this learned behavior is that if they learn pretty quickly that they're quite strong, and if you don't really expect it, um, they will turn you around if you don't stay really strong and hold that leash. So to be able to solve that problem, you definitely again have to think two steps ahead of your dog. Know what they like, know where they love to pull. For male dogs, in his situation, he likes to go sniff the bushes or the trees, or he wants to go pee on them. And that means that they're going to be a very, if a second before the thought to go see that bush and then yanking me. So it's very important to expect that and stand really still to be able to not follow them as they pull you really strong. Besides that, that's just to manage it and prevent it again from happening and from them to self-reward again over and over again. At the same time, I would definitely teach him the leash pressure cue. So that is basically respecting the pressure on the leash. So when you reach the end of the leash, that's not your sign to pull against it and pull me, even though you are at the end of the leash. And I would definitely incorporate some pre-macking and some impulse control as well. Want to add anything, or can I continue?
No, I think you summed it up nicely.
Okay. I think that's gonna be our last one.
Yeah, we touched on this a little bit before, Brownie and her anxiety. But yeah, Anya,
Um,
you want to take this one?
yeah, so I'll just repeat what I started before. So here I had Brownie for a couple of days, and this was our morning. I did not play the video before. This was our morning stroll around the neighborhood just for a quick pee and poo. And she felt really overwhelmed by the environment that she was in. It was quite an empty neighborhood at that point, but she felt overwhelmed, and her by pulling she just wanted to go back home. You can see that when I stopped, she's quite uncomfortable. She just wants to go. Her back feet are shaking. um, so for a dog like this, obviously depends on what they feel uncomfortable by or anxious about. For her, it was really trying to get away from the situation. So I did take her home, back to safety, and then found a calmer, quieter place to for her to be able to walk and do her business, which she wasn't able to do at that point because she was too anxious about just getting out of that situation. Um, and for dogs like this, I would definitely want to start working on having them feel safe in the environment. That means probably I would have to do it really progressively, depending on the severity of the problem. But I would also encourage you, if you have a dog that's really anxious in different environments, to start working with a behaviorist to resolve that before asking anything of them in any kind of environment like this. Obviously, when your dog is pulling because of some kind of stress, there's absolutely no reason for asking them to do anything, because they're just in this kind of fight, flight, freeze. In her situation, definitely a flight mode where their brain is not in a place to learn effectively at all. Um, yeah. Would you add anything?
No, I like what you said. I think with dogs who who feel a sense of anxiety, I think it's again unreasonable to ask them to follow your criteria of loose leash walking when they're in survival mode. So I think this would be the most important. And the first step is having them feel more comfortable in the environment that they're in, or maybe it's not the environment that's making them stressed, maybe it's something else, you know.
Yeah.
So with Brownie specifically, it's the environment, but if they're feeling anxiety because of some other reason, the first step would be trying to get them more comfortable with where they're at.
Yeah. I think her case, or generally I think the cases that we've listed, I think give you quite a good idea of um, how hard it is to expect a skill that you think your dog like knows or has learned at home and does it really well, when there is something else on their mind that you're trying to fight in order to get your nice loose leash walking. And I feel like in the end the skill is so easy to teach, but all the rest that comes before that, it's much more difficult. It takes a lot more time.
Mm.
um
So now we're turning back to the question which we asked halfway through, well, not halfway through, but more towards the beginning of this presentation, is what makes leash walking a difficult behavior to teach and maintain for your dog? Now that you've gained a little bit more insight, we're interested to know if your answer is still the same. So feel free to comment below if you've gained some more insight, what you feel impacts your dog and their loose leash walking.
Yeah, it could also be a combination. It doesn't have to be one. It's usually a combination as well. So,
Yeah. Yeah.
or it can be a different cause for a different situation as well.
And once we've kind of addressed the giant part of the iceberg that lies underneath the water, we can come to that actual tip of it, which is the loose leash walking. And once you start working on loose leash walking and the actual skill itself, here comes the second solution, which is sticking to your criteria and having clear criteria. You have basically what you have to do, what your job is once you start actually working on the actual loose leash walking, is that you have to make the behavior more reinforcing than the old one, and really be clear with what you expect of your dog. If you change your requirements depending on the situation, your dog will learn that what is reinforcing to them is different in different situations, and that the criteria don't stand sturdy and strong, which means that they can be overlooked or dismissed. And yeah, what we like to do to kind of help you picture the situation, it's like as if your dog has two banks. One of the banks supports the old bad behavior. It's the bad bank. Well, bad behavior for us, for the dog, not necessarily. So in this case, that would be pulling on leash, and the good behavior and the good bank, which is walking on a loose leash. So with every kind of situation, with every training session that you do, if your dog repeats the bad behavior that they've learned previously, you put money in the bad bank. And when they practice the good behavior and walk nicely on a loose leash, when you ask them, you put money in the good bank. And obviously you would like the good bank to thrive and the bad bank to go bankrupt. So you definitely would want to support positive experiences and work with your dog to make the behavior of loose leash walking as rewarding as it can be for them.
Awesome.
Right?
Yeah.
Anything else? I think this even after many people, even after solving the giant, pool of problems that lie beneath the surface, they sometimes then get stuck with not sticking to that criteria and just generally being inconsistent or forgetful during their training, which is another part where the whole behavior can fall apart.
Right. Well said. So, want to know what drives your dog and how to work with that to achieve the loose leash walking of your dreams? Well, we have a little recipe. So,
this is. Do you want to say, or should I do it?
You can go ahead.
Okay. This everything that we've been talking to you about was just kind of scratching the surface. And what we've done is we've put a specific program together for you that follows and guides you and your dog step by step, starting with everything that is, underneath the surface of the iceberg, and then slowly starting to make our way up to the tip of it. And we do so with a theory that we've put together that we've called the pyramid. And we start at the bottom with building strong foundations and addressing everything that lies underneath the surface, which are the tools. So the tools that we address are ensuring our dog can have a calm mindset, that they have food drive, and that they like to work with us. So this is the kind of the things that lie underneath the surface. So for different dogs, we address different things. And with the personalized feedback, we help you identify what the drivers for pulling on leash are for your dog and work on them in this area that we call the tools. And after that is sorted, and we find situations where your dog is happy to work with you and is happy to work with food and is in a good state of mind that is conducive to learning, we can then move on to the skills. Now, these are the skills that are the practical part of loose leash walking, which is the position by our side, the leash pressure cue, and stuff like this. Then once we've got that sorted, we move on to the work. Anya, would you like to take it from here?
Yeah, the work is where you put all your skills and the tools into real life work. That's usually one of the hardest chapters. But even that being said, the tools, the skills, and the work, they always kind of overlap. You always you don't just go like, the tools sorted, the skills are sorted, the work. You always kind of go back. And then in the work, you go like, I don't have that tool. And you have to go back and you grab the tool from your toolbox and you kind of incorporate it in the work. So the work is basically moving the skills and the tools and everything in real life and trying to just trying it in the real world. And then when that's kind of working out and that's kind of done, you go up to the polishing. The polishing, what we put in that chapter, is some behaviors that we like to use on the leash, simultaneously with additional exercises and behaviors that we like to have in our toolbox with leash walking out in everyday life. We also continue to polish the work, because this is also often where the things get stuck, because out in the real world situation is much different than outside in your garden in the comfort of your home. So we face new challenges. So basically polishing and upkeeping, they're always kind of active, because you always have to kind of nurture that behavior that you have taught your dog. So after the polishing, there comes upkeeping. That's gonna be until the end of your life, and then at the end of your dog's life. You're just gonna have to nurture and maintain your criteria, because dogs are quite smart, and if our expectations change entirely, or entirely, let's say, then also they will fall back into their old habits. So it's important. It's not that you're gonna have to maintain it day in and day out and really rewarded every second of your day, but you're gonna have to be still keeping your criteria, to be able to say that your work has been paid, you've worked towards all the way up to here. So it's good to maintain that behavior so it doesn't fall apart. Yeah.
Yeah, I think also to add, I think the polishing stage is really where you get to test the strong and sturdy foundations that we've built, that you've built with your dog. It's where we kind of challenge the behavior a little bit with different distractions, different environments, and so on and so forth. And then when we have the entirety, then comes the upkeeping, which is basically just reminding your dog of the behavior and maintaining the reinforcement. So encouraging them and showing them that, in fact, walking on a loose leash is still fun, and you still get rewarded, and it's still fun to work with me on a loose leash.
Okay.
And with that, if any of you would like to dive deeper into some of the things that we've talked about and really get feedback on your dog and the specific hurdles that they face when it comes to leash walking, feel free to join our course, Loose Leashed, and help your walks with your dogs become a breeze. So you can feel proud of your dog's leash manners and gain feedback from both me and Anya that can help you work through this journey alongside your dog.
Right. And today you're the first to be able to purchase that course, and we are starting at the end of September.
So, yeah, you.
Yeah, there's gonna be a link down below for you to get it by the reduced price for this early bird sale.
So you can access that now before we move on to the Q&A section of this live.
If you have any questions, um, now's the time that we're gonna be answering all of your questions, and it's still time to, if you have any questions, to write them down.
And before we get onto the questions, here's a bit of encouragement for you as well. You and your dog, definitely, as we've said, loose leash walking is not the easiest behavior to teach. I think, in fact, it can be one of the hardest. So here's just a word of encouragement that you can do it. You can keep going and believe in yourself. And of course, as always, we are here to help support you on your journey. And you can read more about that in the link that we've pasted of our course in the comments below. So, on to the questions and answers. I think we will pass the mic to our future selves. Hello, everyone, from our future selves. Hopefully, you enjoyed our presentation that we gave you and that you learned something new. We got quite a couple of questions, so unfortunately, I don't think we'll be able to get through all of them, but we'll try our best. I think we'll take the next 20 minutes or
Yeah,
so.
I think maximum, because it's
to answer your questions. But if we happen to not answer your specific question, you're always free to write to us on our email, and we'll get to that as soon as we can.
I added the email.
There's the email that you can contact, and we'll be in contact. So it's me and Anya answering every email, so you know it's coming from us. So any questions or concerns you have, we can get a discussion started on there as well. Okay?
Yeah.
So, let's get started. Yeah, we can start. Let me just find.
You can click on the question and it's gonna pop up.
So we got a couple of questions on the pre-macking principle. So we'll start off with that one. San asks, could you explain pre-macking again, please, briefly? So essentially, the way I view pre-macking is I ask my dog to give me something so I can give them something in return. I really like to use the pre-mack principle with dogs who have a lot of value in the environment, or who find something exciting that's happening more exciting than, for example, food and stuff like that. And in that situation, I ask them to give me a small behavior that they know really well and that's easy for them to carry out, even in a very exciting situation. And in return for that, I don't give them food or toys, but I release them towards the thing that they like to do, or that I give them what they like to do in return. So a good example of this would be my first dog, Kelly. She was a very excitable dog, and what she loved to do more than anything was to run. So what I would reward her with is when I would go on a empty forest path. I would go cycling, and in return for me start to cycle, I would ask her to complete a behavior. So this could be either to look at me, to lie down, something that she found easy to do and a behavior that she knew quite well. So in return for that, I would then go cycle for a few minutes, and she would really enjoy that, and she found it super valuable. And that was actually the point where she would be the most reliable with the behaviors she was offering me, and she would be super quick with what she offered me because the reward that I was giving her was super valuable for her. So it's this kind of a give and take, you give me something, I'll give you something in return. So it's not necessarily, food or those kind of reinforcers that we come across often, but it's something that your dog enjoys to do. Right? Would you add
Yeah,
anything
yeah,
to that?
I love what you said, and like you can actually think of rewards. It can also be an access to the environment. Or before, when we were explaining the Tatsu case, that's the black and white border collie that was pulling because it was the first walk of his day, and we mentioned that you could, for example, set some rules around like leaving the house, so he kind of calms down before he exits his house. For example, I would ask my dogs to, for example, sit in front of the door. So I ask for a sit and then I open the door and then we go out. Or there was a question, what would you do if I want to let my dog sniff the bush? Sure, I can ask for a small behavior such as look at me or sit. Or I think look at me would be more in the context easier to do. So I would ask for look at me and then I would go great. And you can go sniff that bush, for example. So yeah.
Yeah. Now, as you were explaining this, I there was something that came to my mind. I think with pre-macking, just like with many other things, you do have to have a history of it. So you can't just throw your dog in the most exciting of situations and expect them to, give you a behavior in return because they don't have that history of reinforcement. So you ideally you would start with pre-macking with small things that your dog doesn't find overly exciting and that doesn't really throw them over threshold, because once they're over threshold and super excited or right in front of the thing that really excites them, that they find super valuable, it can be hard for them to offer you something in return. But the more practice they have with this, the better, and the more rewarding the process of the give and take, the pre-macking, becomes for them as well, and then the easier it will be for them to offer you behaviors in return even when they're faced with something super exciting. Yeah.
Yeah. Right. Next one. I think this one is a good one as well. Can a long leash help to keep the dog from pulling? So that's a good question. For some dogs, a long line can really relax them because you're not behind their butt, like so close. Because some dogs pull because there is such a short leash and you walk right behind them. So they would pull forward. So with a long line, you kind of avoid that and you give them more space. And some dogs, just by having more space, they would maybe stop pulling. But if the motivators are still there, like we describe in this live, then that would still not solve the problem. Some dogs pull on a really long flexi leashes. Some dogs pull on really long lines as well. So again, you have to address the root cause of the leash pulling for your dog. But what you can do is what we like to do is we separate gear depending on what behavior we're asking from the dog. For example, my dogs have a short leash for walking next to me. For example, if I need to walk in the city on the pavement, on the sidewalk, I want them to be close to me, so I can't afford having a really long leash for them. So then I would use a collar and a short leash, and they know that a collar and short leash and or obviously a verbal cue means you walk next to me. And then I would use a flexi leash or a long leash, for example, depends on what you prefer, to give them more freedom. And I would clip that on a harness, so they will understand that with that gear, this is the cue, and again added a verbal cue and a lot of reinforcement for that specific behavior. This would mean you are more free to walk around. So yeah, you can definitely use gear for different behaviors, but of course you have to teach those behaviors using that specific gear. But the gear itself will not change the behavior, if that makes sense. Maybe for some dogs, again, depends on what their cause for pulling is actually.
Yeah, so we got, I was just reading some of the questions as you were sending them in now, and we got a question by Saskia, and she asks, what do you do in the time you're still building foundations? Do you let them pull on the walk? So I think follows along nicely from what Anya just said, is, of course, it's unreasonable to expect your dog to be perfect at walking on a leash as soon as you started training it. So what do you do when you have to take them out on a walk? You can't just not go for a walk. So what we normally do is we separate our walks with the different gear. So when at first it's I don't know, this will depend on your dog, of course, but at first when it's reasonable for you to expect your dog to walk on a loose leash for maybe 30 seconds, maybe it's a minute, what we would normally do is we would have them on either a long line or a flexi leash. They'd be free to roam, to explore, to pull if they felt like it. And then when it was time to work, when it was time to really focus on loose leash walking, then we unclip them from the flexi leash and clip them onto their collar. So we differentiate it like that with different leashes and harnesses versus collars, etc., etc.
We've had quite a couple of reactivity questions, and for those, would just like to add that we are happy for you to reach to us through email, because we prefer for this kind of work. Reactivity just really varies from dog to dog, and it's really difficult to answer those questions through this live. So we invite you to we'll leave our email address down there, and you're very welcome to write to us. We prefer to work with those cases through private remote consultations.
Yeah, Martine here specifically says, how do you get them to respond to you? She says her dog is not at all responsive to anything like food, toys, or attention. And this is common with reactive dogs because of either of a sense of overwhelm or excitement. But for this, we cannot answer it right off the bat because we don't know your dog specifically or the specific things that, either stress them out or that make them overwhelmed. If your dog eats in most cases but doesn't eat outside and stops responding, it's normally a case of them being overwhelmed or something else happening emotionally. And for that, we would have to work on a case-by-case basis. But you're free to contact us anytime.
I will write the email. You can go ahead with the question.
Right.
You can choose a question, and then I will just write the email in the comments. So yeah.
So we got a couple of questions on how to transfer the behavior outside as well. Stacy here asks, if you teach the loose leash walking skills at home, then how do you deal with the collapse of these skills when you take your pup into the outside world? I feel like when I walk my pup outside and my loose leash walking skills fall apart, I'm just reinforcing undesirable behaviors. Now, this is perfectly normal. Again, when you are in the process of teaching your dog to loose leash walk, it's really difficult for them to loose leash walk, in the most exciting environment out on your everyday walk. So it's not particularly helpful of you to expect your dog to be able to loose leash walk right away. So normally how we set our dogs up for success is to move the behavior outside gradually. What I would recommend you do is pay attention to the environment your dog is capable of working in, what kind of environment makes them more excited, what kind of environment is more conducive of their learning, so that helps them learn better. And slowly you kind of label how either excited or nervous the environment makes them, or how good the environment is for your dog to actually be in a learning state of mind, and work your way up from the easiest to kind of the more difficult, and more difficult if your dog obviously does well. So it's like, I have a good example for you, and that's as if you had if you gave a 7-year-old kid a math equation, an easy math equation, such as 2 + 2, they'd most likely be able to solve it pretty quickly and enjoy the process of solving it and feel good about themselves, that they can do it. They're super cool. They can handle this math equation. But if you then, in the span of 2 weeks, gave that same child a calculus level equation and asked them to solve it, they would not be able to solve it. They'd be overwhelmed, they'd be frustrated with the process, and frankly, they'd be pretty annoyed that you even gave them this kind of equation to start with, and they'd maybe even give up, or it could also affect their self-esteem. So the key is to work your way up to it. Observe your dog, see where they can succeed, and slowly make your way up to the more difficult situations. Is there anything else you'd like to add to that?
I think you summed it up perfectly. Okay. Puppies. What should we do if my puppy just wants to sniff everything and gets excited just because he's outside and walks around and zigzags and doesn't look at me once we leave the house? So puppies are a little bit different just for their just puppy nature. They have completely different needs. You probably just got your puppy, so a lot of people expect that the puppy will just love them from the first day and look at them and try want to be with them. But the reality is that puppies are like, they don't really have a relationship with you. They don't know you, and they're just curious and curious and curious. So they will, like you said, they will just be excited to be outside. They will just excited to be on a walk. They will want to be everywhere at once. So for puppies, it's a little bit difficult to right away ask them to be nice, calm, walking on a leash. So I would advise you to first focus on your relationship with the puppy. Start with foundations, start with the basics, start inside of your home.
And make your training process fun for your
Yeah.
puppy.
Don't worry about like taking them outside and them not listening. If you feel safer, put them on a long leash or like on a leash that drags behind them, so you have a better control of your puppy exploring. But start working on foundations in the environment where your puppy can be successful and can focus and can be with you, and then carry those foundations outside in a more difficult environment. And other than that, focus on ensure that your puppy gets what they need to be curious about the environment, to get to explore, get to play. And yeah, focus on bonding first. So don't stress about them being all over the place outside. Just focus on building up that bond and foundations with them, somewhere where they can actually be with you, not in the environment where they're all over the place.
Yeah, I maybe just wanted to add to your explanation as well that just a friendly reminder that your puppy is also in this world and experiencing everything around them for the first time ever. So everything that they see is new, everything that they smell is new. So likely the outside world is very, very exciting for them. So to some extent, it's very much normal that your dog, your puppy, when you take them outside, will be super excited about everything that's happening because it's happening for the first time and they're trying to gather information about the world. So yeah.
Okay.
We also got a couple of questions on the recall. Kat asks, how can I get a perfect recall so my girl will be safe? Now, this is not something that we necessarily touch upon in this course, but we do have in the plans, there's in the making, a recall course. And I think you will be, no, not I think, you definitely will be able to pre-order it on Black Friday. So you have that to look forward to. We will be talking more about it in detail. But as of now, this is not something that we focus on in this course. But you can look forward to that around Black Friday.
Yeah.
But maybe just to give some tips, essentially you with a recall, the key is to build value for you, for what you have to offer your dog, and practice the behavior in environments that your dog can be successful, so that after all of this practice, when your dog hears your recall cue, there won't be, this kind of process of, is it worth it for me to come back when I'm cold or not? But it will be automatic because they'll be so excited to come running back to you that the behavior will be almost automatic when you call them in most situations. So that's kind of how we start, really building value for your dog to come back to you, and then slowly start testing the behavior under different distractions that are specific to your dog.
Yeah.
So I think you mentioned running on the beach, children, stuff like this.
Yeah. I think for this, in a training process, I would put the dog on a long leash, 20, 30 meters, depend on how much you need, to be able to offer your dog some freedom in places where that's obviously allowed. And so you don't lose this sense of control and having them safe. So long leashes are perfect for that. And very important, don't call your dog when you know they will not come back, because this is how they self-reward for not coming back, which is usually the times where we want to call our dog. And this is how often dogs learn to not come to a recall. So long line, set your dog up for success.
Mm-hmm. The leash pressure cue?
Yeah.
I think, right? How much more time do we have?
We can do 4 more minutes, so we're like 1 hour 45 minutes, and then we can. Our email address is in the comments, so you're very welcome to write your questions or anything down in our email box.
Also, if you would like to have a private, talk to us about private consultations and stuff like this, you can also reach us over on our email. So,
because if you have a very specific case or like a behavioral problem, then it's really important to work with it on like individually, and because we have to get to know your dog to be able to give advice.
So we'll answer this question, and then we'll answer one more, and after this, we'll say goodbye. So Stacy asks, what is a leash pressure cue and how do you train this? Anya, would you like to take this one?
So we feel like leash pressure cue in our leash walking training, when you start training the skills and when you've covered the environmental factors and the key, what did we call it in the webinar? The first part of resolving the problem. When you've resolved that, then you start working on the skills. So for us, that's walking by your side. And one of the skills that we find really important is the leash pressure cue. And that's for your dog to start respecting the pressure on the leash. So if my dog pulls me in one direction, the pressure on the leash should not cue them to keep pulling me against the pressure, but should
be a cue for them to turn around,
to turn back.
So we teach this as we teach everything else, and with positive reinforcement. So it's essentially similar to an attention cue that you would make, for example, with your voice, like, or something like this, but that your dog feels the pressure on their collar, and it's a cue for them to turn around and go back into the position that we taught them, which is by your side.
Yeah.
And then, is there anything else?
Yeah, I think
regarding
that's
that one?
Yeah. But why it's so important? Why leash pressure cue is so important is so the dogs, because when we try to avoid our dogs pulling us on the leash, it's the dogs that pull on the leash don't have the leash pressure cue, so they try, when they feel the pressure, they pull even more. So this is what we're trying to avoid with teaching them, that the pressure means something else, not the pulling against it. Yeah. Which one?
Stacy also asks, how do you condition a calm state of mind when you are out in the environment? We touched a little bit on this when we're talking about reactive dogs. Again, this is a very case-specific question that will depend on the dog, unfortunately. So I can't give you an easy go-to answer right off the bat. But for example, what helped with my dog Ponya is establishing a routine that would nurture a calmer state of mind. I think I touched upon this in the actual webinar itself. So for him, what really helped him was either getting out of the car first, getting onto the walking path first, so it wasn't him and all the dogs leaving together and all in one excited mob, but that he was there first and that he was with me, and maybe I would even play with him, so he was engaging with me and not with the other dogs. That would raise his anticipation levels. So again, this will depend on what exactly makes your dog excited. Are they anticipating something, or is it something that makes them nervous? And then I would first of all identify that and try to establish a routine that would nurture a calmer state of mind. So
We have more ideas depending on what kind of dog you have in the course as well. But like we mentioned, I think the best way is to work to work with a trainer. So if you take our course, then take a working spot, because it's really like what we advise always depends on what kind of dog you have and what they struggle with in the environment.
and I think that's all we can take on for today. Thank you everyone for joining us. We appreciate it. There was a lot of people again from all over the world. It always makes us very happy to see everyone being so engaged and joining in regardless of the time zone. So thank you for that. This live is recorded and we will be uploading it onto our YouTube channel. So if everyone would like to watch it back, or if there was something that you'd like to come back to and take note of, you can. We will upload that over the course of the next week, and of course let you know. And as we said before, if you have any questions that we haven't answered, or if any questions pop up as you think about this over the course of the next few days, feel free to contact us. I think you can paste the email.
Yeah, I pasted the email address in the comments. I can pin it as well. There it is.
There you go. And of course, our Loose Leashed course is available, so you can find the link on that in the comment section over there, I think. And you are free to join. If you take a working spot, it will be me and Anya giving you the feedback and working alongside you and your dog's particular struggles. So hopefully we'll get to see some of you there as well, and we can work together on this problem. Thank you, everyone, for your attention and for joining us. Have a great day.
Good night for most of you.